I often get questions about how to choose the appropriate sound palettes or how you think of your scoring in terms of not only the kinds of musical content you create, but also the kinds of sounds you choose. And my advice is very simple. You try to choose sounds that are not only appropriate to your scene and or your film score, but are unique and distinctive. Now, many of you may not know the term Simpsons yellow, but when The Simpsons was first created, what they did was they decided to kind of color everybody's skin in a way that no matter where you were, that if you saw The Simpsons instantly, you would know it was them. Hence, Simpsons yellow for everybody's skin tone, which, as you know, is completely unique within the cartoon world. Now, some of the most extreme instances of creating unique sound palettes are actually things that you kind of think of as cliche. For instance, Star Wars at the time was completely unique in that most sci-fis were considered low-budget films, so they used abbreviated ensembles and a lot of synthesizers. Now, in the instance of Star Wars, the idea to kind of use a 90-plus piece orchestra was completely unique, and it also distinguished the film and the score, and of course, the rest is film iconic history. So imagine when you're creating sounds or choosing sounds for the scores that you create, that you can not only serve the film or the video or whatever you're doing, but also kind of have some unique kinds of sounds. Now I'm going to play you a video clip, and it's a clip that's actually from a piece of music actually from a Blizzard promotional. I've re-edited it to kind of use a lot of cat footage, so there you go. Now, what you're going to hear right away is a unique set of percussion, which is actually a set of pots and pans, and I used some guitars and all stuff. That's normal, but the other thing I did was I used harmonica, which made that very unique. Now, what that serves is it serves the scene, but it also puts me in a position where the sound is unique, because you don't hear a lot of harmonica within film scoring or video scoring. Well, one, it's kind of a pain in the ass to record, and you'll find that out. But the other reason is because I just wanted to have something unique. Now, if you think of like The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, if you read articles, Ennio Morricone said that he chose those sounds because they were the sounds he could afford. He couldn't score with big orchestras. So what is the unique aspects of Good, Bad, and the Ugly? And I suggest you look that up. But it's people singing, and it's the jaw harp, which is that boing, 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 boing thing. And there's some guitar, and there's also ocarina, which is a clay flute. Many of you know that from, I guess, Zelda and the Ocarina of Time. So what I'm going to play now is the Blizzard score that I used that employs guitar, pots and pans, and harmonica. So here we go. So to summarize, what we're really trying to do here in choosing the proper instrumentation, orchestration / sound palette is obviously first serve the film, and then secondly, make sure that your score is absolutely unique, and that's where you can get creative. Choose the appropriate instruments and have them play in their appropriate or inappropriate way. I mean, you could choose to have guitar and just use xylophone mallets to play it so that you have a unique sound. That's where the creativity comes in. And you'll also find that if you choose unique instruments, that the score will kind of tend to evolve on its own, because there are only going to be certain kinds of things. Once you restrict your sound palettes, there will only be certain kinds of motivic development within your music that's going to kind of speak, and a lot of it's just not going to speak. But either way, I think you're well on your way to kind of creating distinctive and unique soundtracks and scores. Next, I'd like to talk about understanding the passing of time within film and video. Now, the most obvious examples of that would be what's called the film montage. Think of Rocky training, getting ready for the big fight. In that instance, all of these clips are quick cut together in a way of indicating the passing of time. So instead of watching him train for 7 or 9 months, we get that condensed down into about 45 seconds with a beautiful kinds of a song. Now, but what I'm going to talk about is more subtle kinds of technique, and that technique is called ostinato technique. And all it is setting up a little melodic pattern like do 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 do, those kinds of continuo patterns. So the idea with those is those ostinato create two dramatic points. The first is the actual pattern itself, the rhythmic pattern itself, indicates an aspect of passing of time. So if you have an ostinato that's just about here at this tempo, it's going dum 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 ba dum 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 bum bum ba dum. Now that what that does is that gives you a sense of time passing, because you've hooked yourself to a very identifiable kind of rhythm. Now, the trick is that you also need to give a sense of an overarching dramatic feeling to that. And the way you do that is by establishing a rhythmic pattern underneath and then trying to create very long arcing kinds of lines. Now, obviously that can be synthesizers. The examples I'm going to play for you are more orchestral in nature. So the idea is that as you have this pulse underneath, whatever that is, that you put a nice long arcing string part or equivalent in synthesizer that's going dee da 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 dee da. And obviously you have to forgive my for singing on that, but the point I'm making is to kind of combine the two. So one is actually giving you the passing of time, and the other layer, sub-layer over the top, is giving you the sense of an overall emotional arc. And by arc, I mean that in the most liberal sense, in that that emotional statement need not actually go anywhere. Because a lot of times, all you're really trying to do is say, oh, somebody feels terrible, or something scary is about to happen. And a lot of times within a film, those emotional statements are very seldom completed, except within the last 10 minutes. So here I'm going to play a space montage here that I created. And note when you hear the ostinato patterns coming, and listen also for those sub-layers over the top, which kind of are giving you an emotional content. This is the entrance of our first ostinato. It's dramatic in intent. Notice a single note down below, and all of the notes above this are actually somewhat discordant, giving a sense of motion and time, but unease. Now, you can consider that a suspenseful moment of some sort in the most generic sense, almost creepy and scary, although it could just indicate emotional upset. The important thing is to not be so defined in what you believe your musical motifs can establish from an emotional standpoint. Because you'll find the more you do this, the more your cues have greater versatility. Here's the entrance of our second ostinato. Now notice this has more of an anchored tonality in minor. It's not discordant. It actually sounds somewhat sad. Now this can be identified as perhaps a moment of regret or a moment of discovery that's not entirely positive, actually quite the opposite. So the thing to keep in mind is that, like, when you're creating ostinato technique, that you can work within tonality and also within discordance. And the trick is obviously, once you make a commitment to one or the other, that you stay within those moods until the moment when you need to change, which we can discuss at a later point. So to summarize, when writing ostinatos, to indicate the passing of time, you always want to have two elements there. The first element is obviously the continuous pattern, rhythmic pattern, that we'll call that like layer one. And over the top, you want to have a nice long layer which lengthens the phrase out in a way that you kind of perceive it, not as like 4 counts at the time, the way you might perceive a hip hop loop. So, one, a nice continuous pattern, could be broken, but repetitious, and a nice long arcing continuous long line that sits over the top. And that way you have always the passing of time and dramatic content. Finding the moments in video and film can be a really tricky thing, because in a lot of instances you will be so nervous about trying to be correct within the film itself that you'll identify much too many moments. And so your cue sheet, instead of looking like 5 or so kinds of key areas within which you're going to kind of create your musical accents, looks like 17 pages identifying every single instance of somebody turning their head or somebody lifting up something and all of that. And a lot of it is just nerves. So the real trick is for you to kind of start sitting around when you're watching television and noticing the moments that the people that you admire within the scores that you really love, how they're really treating the film. What you'll find out in most instances that those key moments within any particular musical piece over a film segment are usually only 2 to 3 moments, and the rest of it kind of just goes on as the passing of time or the motion moving towards that. So the object is to understand the length of the film and to put yourself in a position that, one, you don't chapterize everything in a way that it's called Mickey Mousing. And Mickey Mousing is a term that they use from way back. All it means is that you're literally kind of making all of the action very cartoon-like. Like, think of a Tom and Jerry cartoon or Mickey Mouse, where it's like every time somebody did anything of any significance, or even a lot of times insignificance, that there was a musical accent. The film composer during those many of those cartoons didn't have the track count necessary to layer up an elaborate and extensive sound effects and Foley soundscape, which indicated that the cartoon was happening in real time. So that was the responsibility of the composer. And as such, those scores are created in a different way than we would think of them today. So there are 2 things to note, and we're about to review a little film clip of mine from a DC promotional on the destruction of Krypton. The first thing is that you don't want to chapterize in a way that like everything is buttoned off its own chapter. Now, the easiest way to not chapterize is actually not to resolve. For those of you who don't understand a resolution, that would be where you kind of like think of ta-da, think of those ta-da moments as each kind of a resolution. So your cue starts, do-do-do-do-do, and then it ends with ta-da, this is the ending. Now in music school, and probably within your own work, if you're not doing this kind of work, you think that that's really a desirable thing, to kind of have a natural dramatic arc within your piece of music. And a lot of times it takes a while for you to get used to the idea of creating work that is completely unresolved. But remember, a lot of times those resolutions, you want to save in the same way that the filmmaker is saving those moments for the very end of the film. And if you keep chapterizing off in a way that you're completing your musical piece, what's going to happen is you're not going to build the momentum and the necessary musical arc that follows the dramatic arc for you to kind of create impactful work. So, being comfortable with completing your musical pieces in a way that they're unresolved allows you to dovetail them to the next piece of music. So if you have a piece of music, da da da, and then instead of like ta-da, before you start the next piece of music, it goes da 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 da, and it's up in a way that it's a question mark. Well, where does it go from here? Then when you restart, you can actually layer those pieces of music. One, that makes it easier for you to score the piece of film with separate pieces of music. And two, it puts you in a position where you get a sense that the music is ongoing in the same way the story is ongoing. We're going to review The Destruction of Krypton, which is within a digital comic book that DC printed for the Injustice saga / video game. So here we go. Within this video, we're going to ID 7 moments. The first is the actual planet and the appearance of the planet actually burning to the ground. The second is the baby. The third is the noble regret in the decision to send the baby off into space rather than to have it perish with the rest of the planet. The fourth moment is a mother's love for her son. 5 is the passing of insistent moments in time. And you're going to hear that as an actual march. The 6th moment is the launch of the ship, which you're going to hear as a fanfare. And the last one, which is the epilogue, is the baby is blown out in space as the planet ends in destruction. Here's our moment with the baby. Some pianos and some bells, very gentle. Here's the dramatic and noble decision by the parents that they must save their child even as the planet goes up in flames. Here's moment 4, mother expressing love to her son one more time, one last time. Here's the march of time. This is the moment when they know that time is no longer in their favor. The launch of the ship, accented by a fanfare. This is the moment where the baby is alone. Notice the piano is gone. It's everything but. The piano was the mother in that instance. So what you're really trying to do within your musical cues that all exist within one piece of video or film is create them in a way that none of them says, this is a conclusion, this is an ending or a chapter, unless you intend to do so. The easiest way to do that is to kind of get yourself familiar with the difference between a resolution and a non-resolution. Now, obviously, they teach that in year 1 in music school. I'm not saying you have to go through that process, but the idea is to kind of study those moments when you think, okay, this is definitely musical ending, and then make yourself familiar and absolutely comfortable with creating pieces of music that have no musical resolution or ending. Thanks for watching. This is Wendell Yuponce. Any questions you can leave in the comment section below. If you'd like to work one-on-one regarding any of these topics or additional topics regarding film and television scoring, you can book me direct in the Pyramind Mentorship Network program.
If you're a music producer, subscribe to our channel and stay up to date on the latest Pyramind tutorial videos, track breakdowns, elite sessions, and more. visit us at pyramind.com.